Hey there, Bannock folks. You're tuning in to another episode of Bannockdotes, a podcast that holds it down for the underground sound here in Ontario, Canada. And I'm your host, Phil Paxton. Thank you for joining me today. We got a good one for you. But I need you to do something for me real quick before we get started. Smash that subscribe button right down below. Just destroy that like button on this video, and do me a favor, leave a comment down below. Do you like it? Do you not like it? What do you think of the show? Tell me your thoughts. I'm open to any sort of ideas or criticism you have, because hey, this is all about the music scene, the Ontario music scene, and that's a lot of people are involved, so it's not just me calling the shots here. This is kind of everybody's show. This is Bannockdotes. Now, if you're new to the show, this is what we do. We bring people on to the show, whether they're promoters, musicians themselves, photographers, and get them to tell some of the funniest stories they have from working with bands and being in band culture. Also, getting them to plug whatever they've got going on currently on the show, and everybody is happy about it. All right, folks, let's get into some of the shows that are happening around Ontario. We got local Ontario shows happening in the month of June, and we got lots of friggin' cool stuff happening. All right, starting tomorrow, June 9th, Comeback Kid are doing a small run of shows. They're starting off in St. Catharines with a Bannockdotes and Indoor Shoes show that we're putting on together. Our friends in Reality Tonight are playing that. Dear God, Wildside, that's going to be such a good time. And then the following day, June 10th, they're in Elgin at the Community Center. June 11th, they're at Tide Downfest in Detroit. And June 12th at the Rec Room in Buffalo. Wednesday, June 15th in Kitchener at the Study Room, aka Ask a Punk, we have Massanera, Terry Green, and Basque. Constrain and our friends in Reality Tonight are doing a couple shows together. June 16th, they're at the Milton Legion. June 17th, they're at Doors Pub in Hamilton. And June 18th, they're at Vostrovy in Toronto. Thursday, June 16th in St. Catharines, we have the Mayside celebrating their release of their new beer, Good Old Haze IPA, with the Royal North, and that's just at Warehouse. Sunday, June 19th in Windsor, Hexus, Hell is Other People, and Netherith are playing at the Backstage. Trauma Model and Hexus are doing a couple shows together. That's our friends in Trauma Model. And Hexus are coming all the way from Copenhagen in Denmark, so that's a hell of a long journey. So we're super stoked that they're playing our small area of Ontario, but they're doing a couple shows together, and we're putting one on. That's right, Bannockdotes presents Hexus, Kothra, Trauma Model, Temple of Night, and Deciphering the Pale at Warehouse here in St. Catharines. Get your tickets at warehouseniagara.com for that. June 22nd in Kingston, they're at the Overtime. June 23rd in Ottawa at the Dominion Tavern. And June 25th in Montreal at Piranha Bar. Tuesday, June 21st in Ottawa at the Brass Monkey, we have Suffocation, Atheist, Surreptition, Intrial, and Gland. Thursday, June 23rd in Toronto at the Hard Luck, we have Dayglow Abortion's Hate Speech album release with Citizen Rage, Dragged In, and Losers. In Hamilton that night, however, at Doors Pub, we have Cognitive, Tombstoner, Liquidator, and World's Grasp. Friday, June 24th in Windsor at the Backstage, we have Cognitive, Tombstoner, and Vile Driver. But if you're in Toronto that night, Fuzzed and Buzz presents a special night with Mouth Congress, Leather Uppers, Astro Witch, and Low Orbit, and that's at the Bovine. Saturday, June 25th in Niagara Falls at the Upper Space, we have Fight War, Not Wars, the Red Cross Benefit Show with Well and Wasted, Borden City Beatdown, Dominion, Elephant, and Sin. In Ottawa that night, at House of Targ, we have They Grieve, Kothra, Moratorium, and Grandmother. But in London that night, at Richmond Tavern, we have Single Mothers, Mall Crimes, and Strawberry Cough. Wheatus and Kixie are doing a couple shows together, June 24th at the Bentmore Theatre in Oshawa, June 25th at the Legion in Tillsonburg, and June 26th at the Casbah in Hamilton. And a couple months from now, we like to plug this every episode. We have Hold Your Ground Fest, and that's September 9th and 10th in Mississauga at the Hansa House. Damage Control and Soulless Music Promotions are presenting that. That's with Never Ending Game, Mind Force, Pain of Truth, Dare, Momentum, Gridiron, Cohesion, Cold Shoulder, Endgame, and Mile End. Many more bands. Get your tickets at holdyourgroundfest.com. Lots of cool stuff happening in Ontario. Lots of shows happening in Ontario. So if there's something that you heard that's in your area, go out and support. We want to see your face. It's been a while. Some of us are playing some of our first shows in 2 years, and it's kind of surreal. So yeah, love and the people that are going at the shows, I love your support. Keep that up. We love that energy. All right, let's get on about my guest this week. We have Pat Murphy. Now, this dude's a legend. He helped shape and mold the Niagara music scene to what it is today. He, had a front seat to see Alexis on Fire do their thing, and he put on so many cool shows in Niagara, at L3 primarily. But he's done just so much for bands. He plays in bands. He's currently in Toronto. He's doing lots for his career. He started a label, and he's managing artists, doing lots of cool things. And it's cool to know that it all started from the small town of St. Catharines and the humble Niagara music scene, and it's just, I love to see it. And you know what, I hadn't seen the guy in like 10 years, and we sat down, and he was just so insightful. He's been in this industry for quite some time, and this was one where I just kind of had to sit back and just listen, because he was just, certainly so wise. All right, you know what? Let's just get right into this. Enough of me yapping away. Let's go. Yeah. Yeah, we're good. Right on, folks. Welcome back to an episode of Bannockdotes. I'm your host, Phil Paxton. The t-shirt of the week is D-Boy. Definitely go check those folks out. And my guest this week is Pat Murphy. Yo. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, bro.
How you been? How's your day been?
It's been good. I was just saying before we started filming that it was my mom's 60th birthday today.
Nice.
So I was in town, doing a little winery lunch with some fam, and my wife and I came in last night. We were in Welland for a friend of mine's kind of like wedding celebration as well. So it's been a lot of like, family and like seeing old homies, and kind of like really indulging in Niagara, so to speak.
That's good. And then here we are.
I know, yeah.
That's
cool.
great.
Yeah.
Now, I don't care. I couldn't even tell you the last time I've seen you in person. Probably back in the heydays of the Niagara music scene, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. So, obviously my name's Pat Murphy, per what you said. I grew up in St. Catharines, was born in St. Catharines. I started promoting concerts and going to shows and just becoming a fan of the music scene at a pretty young age, like 16, 15, 16. And at that time, I was just like really into like music generally speaking. Like I just loved discovering new artists, whatever. And so I started going to shows, and I was really blessed because this other dude, Joel Carrier, was a big promoter in the city, and he was doing like really, really cool shit with Alexis on Fire and City and Color, and quickly got to work with him and kind of immerse myself in the music scene, and kept promoting concerts kind of independently and booking tours and growing with the music, and it's kind of led, and this passion that I had kind of turned into a career, basically.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's right now I exist as a artist manager, and I have a record label with a business partner of mine, but for the better half of my life, I've been a concert promoter or a talent buyer or some version of that.
Yeah.
Like I've worked in live music for over half my life.
So you're not event planning anymore?
Not directly, no.
Right.
So, nowadays, it's primarily artist management. And
right.
Then, again, I have a record label that's kind of independent, where we've been kind of using that to incubate talent and kind of find new artists and build them up. I mean, I don't know in terms of your list of questions, like, you know, kind of how deep you want me to go into the promoter game, but you know, I really I feel like I had carved out like a pretty good lane in St. Catharines when I was here, and you know, worked with Scene Music Festival, and you know, I was booking probably, you know, in Niagara, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 shows a month on
Wow.
average. You know, like when we were doing shows at L3 and kind of, you know, around the region.
Yeah.
And I did that for so long that I ended up getting offered a job in Toronto in 2010. Moved to Toronto, worked for this company called Union Events, which was Live Nation's competitor. So we were like the #1 independent concert promoter in Canada.
Cool.
And that was really cool because it was like, okay, like this thing that you built on your own and you've kind of gotten to this point. Now you have an opportunity to work with this bigger company, get more resources. So then I kind of pivoted from like doing every aspect of being a promoter, meaning like back in the day I was printing the flyers, dropping off the tickets, like, you know, making the MySpace
The hustle.
campaign. Yeah, I was doing everything. Basically, I got to the point where it was like, okay, now you're just responsible for booking the shows, and then we have departments that can kind of work with you to promote them and coordinate this stuff and you know, production manage. So when I was working in Toronto for Union Events, I was booking about 150 shows a year across Canada. You know, Montreal, Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, Ottawa, Vancouver. You know, all of that, and we worked on Riot Fest as well and a few other bigger festivals. But it was about 2016 where I was like, man, I've been doing it for, you know, 12 years at that point. And when I started booking concerts, it was just like, I want to see this band play with this band. Like that was really like my impetus. It was just like, it was more like, hey, like I want to participate in this community. And it was never like I need to make money at this or this needs to be my career. And in fact, like, you know, I didn't even think that was possible really when I started doing it. It was nice to make a little bit of extra money here and there, but then, you know, as someone, as any promoter will tell you, like you're gonna lose money soon. Like even if you're on a roll and you're like doing good, like eventually you're gonna get hit. So after doing that for a long time and working kind of at a scale that became really national and sorry, I'm just gonna put my phone on do not disturb.
Yeah, no worries.
You know, working on that kind of bigger level, I started looking at the like the hierarchy of the music industry and realizing that like promoters don't have it super easy. They have to like bankroll these entire tours. They have to front up so much cash, and it's really kind of calculated gambling. It's like, you know, looking around this room, there's all these different posters, and you know, I say Bring Me the Horizon poster, and I was fortunate enough to book them in St. Catharines when Suicide Season came out. That show made money, and the band was growing and blowing up, and promoters probably made money off them for a few years. But then there was a point where Bring Me the Horizon kind of dipped, if you remember, where it was like they were changing sounds. It wasn't like they weren't necessarily accepted by the same community that kind of initially launched them. They weren't really deathcore anymore.
Right.
And a lot of promoters lost money in that era. And it's really hard to kind of know like how the market's going to shift and like what the next trend's going to be. And even though I felt like I was good enough at it that I would get it right more often than not, the times to get it wrong, like you get it wrong, it would be really tough because it was like, you know, oh, I booked this show 6 months from now and it's just like not selling tickets. And no matter how hard we promote it, it's not moving. People just don't care about that artist anymore. And so I realized like, okay, even when I look up to the biggest promoter in the country, and I think at the time I was definitely one of the more active talent buyers. Like I was in the conversation about, or you know, about people that can actually book national tours and do big shit. And it was like, man, they're still struggling with the same things. They're still getting into bidding wars. They're still losing money. They're still booking festivals. Some of these festivals are losing millions of dollars. That's not the future I want to have. I love discovering artists. I love working with new artists and kind of developing talent. And I was already managing artists and booking stuff, but it was just more of like a side hustle.
Yeah.
I ended up being like, okay, well, what if I do that full time? Like, what if I take this, like all my resources and go right into this lane? And so then around 2016, I ended up meeting this dude, Andrew Kennedy, who I work with now, still to this day. And he was a little bit more experienced in the artist management side. And I think we had kind of complementary skill sets, and we really kind of hit it off from a, you know, philosophical, you know, artist development, business development side of things. And yeah, we linked up. He gave me an opportunity to come work with him, leave promoting, and then we've been kind of building this business since.
Right.
So yeah, that was kind of you know, how I got out of event planning. And you know, we still like have a hand in that stuff, being artist managers, like whether it's a CD release party or coordinating a tour and like working with the promoters, but I'm not the person like putting the offers together and
Right.
making the venues really anymore, which is it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, I
Take
did
the
it
back seat.
Yeah, I did it for long enough that I felt like, man, it's like there's this expression. It's like, you know, when like a dog's chasing a car, and it's like chasing this car, chasing the car, and then it catches the car, and then it's like, wait a second, like now what? Like,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I felt like I kind of caught the car as a promoter, and I was like, wait, what am I even doing here anymore? Like, is this really what I want to keep doing for the rest of my life? And then when I started to reflect, I was like, no, I need to pivot. Like, now's the time. And yeah, it's been fun. New challenges, of course, but like definitely where I want to be, you know?
Yeah.
Now, for sure.
And so the record label, what's the name?
Okay, so I can give you kind of some backstory on that if you'd like,
Cool.
and kind of how that came together to kind of contextualize it. So in 2016, like I left as an artist manager, and we had a few clients that had done, you know, major record label deals, and you know, some of them were successful, some of them weren't, and what I kind of realized with one of the artists in particular is that I feel like we signed too early. Like, it was an artist that had never released a song, never played a show yet, and we ended up getting them this major label record deal that was, you know, a life-changing opportunity for them.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to do it, and we were excited to do it too. Like, we were like the people involved, and we're like, all right, let's do it. And kind of after kind of getting into the weeds of that and getting a couple years into that and having some successes and taking some L's as well on the project, I kind of realized, like, man, if you get into that major label machine, if you go to that kind of, you know, level of the industry, and you don't have a strong foundation, when like a gust of wind blows, the whole thing can crumble.
Yeah.
And one thing that I really appreciated kind of growing up in the Niagara music scene and watching someone like Joel Carrier kind of build, you know, his artists, specifically like Alexa on Fire was something I got a front row seat to. It was like the definition of building a foundation. It was like touring, you know, big and small cities, paying your dues, you know, making your money off of your merchandise and packing out shows and creating this almost like cult following.
Yep.
So then by the time, you know, that band particularly got to the point where they were on the radio and much music, it was more of like a tipping point moment that pushed them over the edge into the mainstream. They kind of transcended the underground. But if you like skip that step and you try to go like right to the mainstream, it's really hard to stick and feel secure there because there's nothing really to fall back on.
Right.
If the industry changes or if the radio single flops or whatever. So that was kind of something that we really started to think about, and you know, we decided to build a label, and initially we went to Sony Music Canada and we did a deal with them, and then it was like a distributed label agreement, so like we kind of had more or less like an imprint under Sony Music, and they eventually kind of changed that part of their business into this company that's now called The Orchard. So we're working with The Orchard and, you know, developing certain artists, and at the time, like, our management company is called Care of Management. We just called it Care of Label Services. Like, it wasn't trying to be some flashy Death Row Records or Factory Records or anything. It was more just like, let's add this service on for management clients. And as it started to grow, we ended up kind of unlocking some things with grant funding and Factor and started to have some success. And we were like, okay, this is kind of cool. Let's kind of build it out. And then we ended up, you know, getting through that deal with Sony. We did a new deal with Universal Music Canada through their distributed label setup. But we also partner with different companies in the U.S., a bunch of different distribution services, a whole whack of them. Like, there's a company called AWOL, there's one called Foundation, there's United Masters, there's STEM. It really depends on what the artist, like who the artist is and what's kind of best for them. We kind of create like a holistic plan and really kind of, you know, keep it malleable and try to keep optionality. And now we're at the point where the label feels very real to us now. It doesn't feel just like a service arm of our management company. So we're actually next month, you know, unveiling the branding, unveiling the website, but the label's called Partners.
Cool.
You know, the whole ethos of that is that these are, you know, not as much like, hey, you're signing this deal, we got you for life. More it's like strategic partnership.
Yeah.
Like, we'll be a resource for you. We'll sign you to short-term deals. They'll be artist friendly. And we'll treat this like we're your partners in terms of distribution and label infrastructure. And yeah, that part's been really exciting. It's like it's fun. I always, and I had a label before called Alternative Empire. I don't know if you maybe remember this at all. I'm not sure, but I worked with like this band called the Juliets, who were Cardinals before that, and in Niagara, we had a band called Crystalline that was like a pop.
Yeah, we had Scotty on the show.
Oh, tight. Yeah, so Scotty was in Crystalline.
Yeah.
So that was on it was a different business partner, but it was my friend Mike and I. We had this label, and like, again, we didn't really know what we were doing, but we realized that like, the artist needed a little bit more than a TuneCore.
Yeah.
And so we're like, all right, we'll pay to press the CDs, and I was in bands back in the day, so I had experience doing that stuff for ourselves, and it was just like, okay, like, well, we'll help resource you in these departments, and we'll do fair splits, and we'll partner where we can, and we won't try to be greedy, and we'll work with people that are going to add value to the overall business strategy of an artist or a band or whatever. And it's always been fun because I was like a kid that grew up like, admiring record labels, and like Drive Through Records or Victory Records or Equal Vision or like Sumerian or Interscope or Capitol, like just that kind of like buy a CD, read the whole back of the booklet, look at that, like all that stuff was really exciting to me. So to kind of now be in a position where we can sign artists, work with them, and help them really grow their business, that's really, it's been fulfilling for sure.
Cool. Yeah. Are you allowed to talk about the artists that you manage?
I am. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
I just wasn't sure.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's just like, you try to like, there's like, so our management roster, kind of, I'll give you kind of like a Cole's notes. We have an artist named Rev. Her name is spelled Reve. She's signed to Universal Music Canada, and then we work with Astralworks in the U.S. and this other label in the U.K. called 3Beat. Astralworks is the team that developed Halsey in the U.S.
Wow.
We started releasing music 2021 on that project. She's got a handful of singles out and a bunch of remixes, but there's a song called Control Alt Delete that's about to go platinum in Canada.
That's super cool.
That was like, I think it went to like number 8 on Canadian radio. It was in the FIFA soundtrack as
nice.
Well. She has another song called Headphones that's kind of going up right now as well, doing really, really amazing numbers on Spotify and Apple Music and streaming in general. So that project is really cool and exciting. We have another client named Anders, and he's kind of like hip-hop R&B artist from Toronto, Asian background. Sonically, it's kind of that like post-OVO Toronto weekend kind of vibe. Really, really incredible voice. He had before we started working with him, this was something that we started working with in 2020, he had a huge hit with this group Loud Luxury, the song called Love No More. It got like 1 billion streams or something like that. And so he has like a really, really strong cult following, does really interesting partnerships with, like, we just did a deal with Puma. He's going to be like their first Canadian artist ambassador.
Super cool.
We got a Canadian tour in July. There's a new deal happening with him that's going to kind of put him in a really interesting position to kind of continue to grow. We have an artist, Elko, Elko. He's a kid from Bedford, Nova Scotia, that I found through a friend of mine. Didn't really have much happening online, but a really amazing sound, kind of sonically. It was like somewhere between like The Cure and Panic at the Disco.
Cool.
But like with a little bit of like hip hop, like trap drums, kind of backdrop to it.
Interesting.
Little Peep maybe a little bit in there too, and love the kid's voice. And we started working together kind of basically from like day one on that project and started building it, and now I think it's gotten to like 15 million streams. He's doing some tour dates in the U.S. with Max Bemis from Say Anything. He's opening up for Grandson at the CNE end of August. Like some really cool stuff on that project. We have some U.S. clients as well. We have this kid YSB Trill from North Carolina. He did a deal with Interscope and listened to the kids. He had a song on Madden actually as well.
Nice.
Another dude named Tobe Duke who's from Detroit, and he has a song called Spaceship that kind of was like blowing up online. And there's a couple other artists as well that we're developing and working with, and it's really like a mixed bag. Like we're pretty genre agnostic. It's like if we see a lane for something and we connect with that artist as a person and we feel like we can help serve them as artist managers, we're like, let's do it, and we scaled up a little bit during the pandemic, which was cool. It was an opportunity where like I feel like a lot of the music industry was like taking a really big hit.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt really lucky because we just kind of doubled down on like artist discovery, and it was like spending time on TikTok and Spotify and SoundCloud, and finding artists that were really interesting, and then simultaneously like finding deals for some of the artists that we had already been working with, and that was really fun because it was like a time where like a lot of people were really stressed out, and I feel for that because it was some of my friends and
Mm-hmm.
people that I work with really closely, and we were able to like actually grow as a business. And
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was super lucky for sure. It was like definitely a weird time for everybody.
Yeah.
But it helped us kind of get through it, knowing that like, hey, we got new stuff to work on, we've got fresh stuff to work, and having the record label was good too because we were like not dependent on live, so we were like, let's just put out more music, let's just keep growing fans, let's just find ways for our artists to break on TikTok or again SoundCloud or Spotify. Like, what can we do in this downtime that doesn't involve going and playing a live event that's going to be able to kind of grow the fan base and keep people interested or grow interest, so that when this stuff does open back up, there's like an audience ready to go serve. And that's kind of what we're in with a bunch of our clients right now.
Yeah. Right on. So you mentioned actually just briefly that you did play in a band back in the day in Niagara. You played in For Man and Ghosts.
Correct.
Was that your first band?
No. It's funny because like being primarily known as like a promoter or a manager, like as an industry professional, quote unquote. I think people like probably either they didn't know me then or they forget that I like actually was a musician of sorts.
Yeah.
I started writing songs when I was like maybe grade 5 or 6.
Really?
Yeah. I had like, again, I was just obsessed with music. It's weird. It was just like buying Spin magazines, Rolling Stone magazines, and had like a teacher that was really into the Beatles in elementary school.
Nice.
And I was taking guitar lessons, so I started learning songs, and I would basically go home and like develop some chord pattern and write some lyrics, and I'm not saying these songs were good. They sounded like Collective Soul or something.
Okay,
yeah. They were pretty like stock chords and like really like kind of vaguely radio rock lyrics, but it was just kind of me exploring. And then when I got into high school, I had some friends that I was like meeting in high school that were playing whether it was guitar or drums, whatever. And I did play guitar, but there was already a guitar player, so I was like, I'll play bass. Like, sure, like whatever. And I remember going to like Mike's Music and Thorold and buying like some really cheap ass bass or whatever, and going to my first like jam session with some homies, and like the drummer was good, the guitar player was good, and I think that like by all means like I'm not a skilled bass player, like I will say that, like I can follow along power chords or whatever, but I think I'm like okay at melodies, so
right.
So I was just like riffing melodies of like on bass to kind of vibe with it, and I remember just being like, this is really cool, like this feels fun. And then we kind of started a band. The first band was called Loser Takes All.
Okay.
This was like pop punk era, like Simple Plan, Newfound Glory, Blink-182. Like
yeah.
We would just like have our homie's dad go to Buffalo to Hot Topic to buy us like Atticus shirts and Famous Stars and Straps, and just like try to dress like these dudes, and really just be like them. And I remember we had a song called like Skater Girl, and just stuff like that. And the thing was, and actually that kind of bringing it back to the live side, that band, we started playing shows locally. We played at a venue called The Hideaway. We played at Front 54 in the basement. We played just random ass venues in St. Catharines. And I guess Front 54 was in Thorold at the time. But
right.
We would bring out, so we'd bring out like, the band kind of built out a bit. There was 5 of us at a certain point. One dude went to collegiate. One dude, we all went to Dennis Morris High School.
Mm-hmm.
But like we were in separate grades and stuff. So we would bring out a lot of people just by nature of being high school kids, spread out. And I remember, we'd get $20 for a show or whatever. I think the most we ever got was $40 for a show.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like being like, man, we brought like 80 people out. Like, and it wasn't, these weren't expensive tickets, but maybe $6 to $10 or
Right.
something, right? And that's when I started kind of doing the math and like running the economics of what was happening. And
Right.
going, well, I heard the venue was like $150, and we brought out 80 people, and that's $6 a head, and you know, this band brought out this many people, and I know they only got paid this much. So I'd be like, this promoter's made like $600 or something.
Yeah.
You know? And I'd be like, wait, why don't we do our own show? So the first ever show we booked that I booked was supposed to be my band's show. It was at Red Square, and our band broke up. Like shortly after, there was an issue with one of the members, like stolen something and lied about it.
Sure.
It was like it was dramatic, and it was like
it always is.
Yeah, and it was unfortunate because we had fun. It was a cool hang, and we like play in his garage and stuff. And so I was kind of like, well, like maybe I keep the show. And I had a couple friends that were like down to help, and I remember this band Boys Night Out.
Yep.
I had seen them play like Bedlam Society. Joel Carey's company had booked them, and another band, the Full Blast, had opened up, and I really liked the Full Blast. So I was like, well, maybe I can try to book the Full Blast for this. And then I think this was MySpace era, right?
Nice.
Like it was. So I had gotten in touch with Full Blast. Hey, I'll guarantee you, whatever, like $150 or something. Like it wasn't a lot of money, but at the time, guarantees were kind of hard to come by.
Yep.
And bands that I think they were from Burlington, so bands were always like trying to get into St. Catharines, Burlington, Hamilton, like the QEW 401 circuit.
Yep.
Like those were shows that you mainly wanted to do them. And I confirmed them, and then I booked Dead Only Better as support, another band called Policies and Procedures, A Day and a Death Wish.
Wow.
And another band called the Young Guns, which was like a bunch of scene dudes that had made like a band. They didn't last long, but they had like some hype at the time.
Cool.
And the show did like 400 people.
Really?
And it was
in Red Square.
It slammed out the venue.
Yeah.
It slammed out the venue. And like I remember the venue dude tried to charge me more after, and we like got into it, and I'm like a 16-year-old kid.
Right.
And after everything, I ended up paying the bands more than their guarantees, so they were really excited, and I still made money, and I was working a part-time job there at that time that was paying me, shit all.
Right.
So I was like, this is really cool. And then and we'll go back to me being in bands too, but that was the first show that ever happened. And then the second show I booked a sleeper set sail. They went to my high school.
Nice.
And so I remember I was friends with Casey, and like we looked up to him a lot. He was a year older than me and my friend group, and we just thought, this guy's so cool, he's so talented. Like, man, like I love Sleeper Set Sail. Like,
how could you not like
yes,
Casey?
Of course. And I still love those records. And later went on to manage them a little bit and book them a little bit.
Nice.
Kind of in the tail end of it, but I offered them a $200 guarantee, which was like a lot of money at the time for a local band.
Absolutely.
And that show did really well too. It didn't sell out, but it was very like successful.
Yeah.
So after I did those two shows, I was just like labeled a promoter at that point. I didn't really have a long-term plan or any infrastructure or even any know-how.
Sure.
But that's how that happened. So going back to the being in a band, after that band broke up, I started another band with some of the same members, but some other dudes floated in and out. We were called Faith of 50 Million. I forget what book we like pulled a page out and just like pointed to some cool words. And
nice.
So, I honestly forget, but we had that band had a website which was like more than my peer. I think the other band had like a friend pages site or something.
Okay.
Like one of those really janky GeoCities
type
sites. But Faith 50 Million, we played our high school thing. It was this band called Starvathon, which I feel like it's a poor taste name in hindsight.
Yeah.
But it was to raise money for starving children.
Yeah.
Somewhere not in Canada. I can't even remember where. But we played in front of like 700 people at our high school in the auditorium, and I think we did one or two originals, but I remember we covered "What It Is to Burn" by Finch.
Cool.
Which was like one of our inspirations at the time, and had like a wireless bass rig, and like went into the crowd, and it was a fun day. It's probably my favorite memory of high school, which I didn't love high school. Like music was more my community than high school itself. And then kind of after that, band kind of broke up. I took a break from being in bands. I jammed around with friends, but like nothing that got to the gigging stage. And then later on, I was friends with another kid in the music scene, Jordan Manier.
Yep.
And I think he was telling me about this band that he was joining with a bunch of talented local musicians, and they all came from other bands, like
Yep.
they'd all had some experiences, and that ended up becoming from Ghost. And I actually think before we even jammed together, I feel like they were already writing a record, and I kind of came in during this Berlin Stories EP thing, and I helped write some stuff and track some vocals, and I kind of would work with Jordan and Pat on like top lines and melodies and stuff like that, and it was really fun. And that band in St. Catharines, we had a really good start. Like we did, because I was a promoter in the city at that point, and I had that part of my brain was really active. We came out kind of splashy. We did 2 CD release shows. We did one at L3 and one at Red Square, and I stacked the bill with like bands that probably shouldn't have been supporting us.
Sure.
Yeah, it was like Straight Reads the Line. Casey Baker did a solo set, and all these really cool bands that were just like down. And I think the first show at L3 did like 400 people came out.
Nice.
The next one did a couple hundred, and there was like the Red Square show was 19 plus, I remember, and there was like girls that came before the show that were underage, and they couldn't get to the show, but they just wanted to buy CDs and get them autographed. And I was like, this is weird. we're nobody, right? But we postered the city and we worked really hard, and then we got to tour and stuff too. So there was like tours with Holly Springs Disaster and Dead and Divine and Straight Reads the Line and this band from Halifax called Letter Unfolds, and those were really fun memories. Like really, every time we toured, we'd lose a band member and swap someone out. But they were really fun times, and we had like no money, and there was barely any guarantees, and the merch money became the gas money, and we would just rely on the kindness of strangers in different cities to let us sleep on their couches. Yeah. And maybe the high point of that outside of the CD release was like some of the shows on the East Coast with Dead and Divine, and playing with them in Burlington, and getting to play in these early shows with Holly Springs Disaster. And we did one year, we played Warped Tour through the Ernie Ball kind of Battle of Bands thing.
Oh, cool.
And after that happened, that was like playing Warped Tour was a bucket list thing of mine.
Yeah.
Ever since I went there.
Absolutely.
I went from when I was 15 to like, I don't know, what was the last year that Warped Tour happened? Was this like 4 years ago maybe?
Something like that, yeah.
Like I went from being like one of the youngest kids at Warped Tour to like one of the oldest people at Warped Tour. But the first time I went to Warped Tour, I remember saying to my homies like, yo, like if we can ever play this, like that's it. Like that's the dream. And so after we played Warped Tour, I was like, okay, like this band's imploding. It wasn't really working. I think I ended up leaving that band. I got offered to actually join a couple other bands that were really good bands that were friends of mine, and I won't mention their names because they ended up keeping the bass players. So it didn't work out.
Right.
But I remember kind of having to weigh that out because my promoter job was starting to kind of pick up traction, and I had to kind of decide: do I want to be a musician and an artist, or do I want to be someone who works on the industry side? And what I realized is that not that it's impossible to do both, but it's hard for people to wrap that around their head, because there's a lot of like us versus them mentality in those roles, like artist versus suits, or label versus band, that kind of mentality. And so I was like, you know what, I don't want people to think that I'm gonna give my band preference if I'm playing in a band, or I'm gonna favor them. And I also don't want them to think that like I'm gonna also maybe mess with their creativity or get involved or overstep. And I just kind of started to take a step back from that. I still have gear. I still mess around here and there. Yeah. Like just, I think that it's fun. It started off as a passion. It's remained a passion. But I did give up the hope of like being a professional musician. And I think actually maybe I remember one of the moments was Fernando Ghost was on tour with Dead and Divine. And Kellen in the band, great dude, he's a talented bass player. He was like, yo, you guys really remind me of this band called As Cities Burn.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'd never heard of them. Like, let's play some stuff. And he plays me, and I'm like, it's like, yo, this band is a lot like us, but like they're way fucking better. And I kind of realized, I was like, we're not gonna be able to beat them at this. And they're so far ahead. And it was one of those sobering moments where I realized, okay, like I'm better at this other thing. Let me go put my eggs in this basket instead. And so that was kind of like the band part of my history. And
yeah. Do you think something like Scene Fest could happen again nowadays?
It's kind of a loaded question. It's weird. So I started as like a kid going to Scene Fest, right? Like just going with my homies. Let's go watch City and Color play in this spot that used to be like a mattress store.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's just spend the whole day checking out all this music and really looking up to everyone involved and really admiring kind of what it had built for St. Catharines. And then I ended up volunteering as a stage manager and then coming on board as a booker as well.
Mm-hmm.
And like booked some really cool stuff that I was really excited about, like lights for like $100 and
crazy,
just really like really random stuff kind of on the way up because people wanted the opportunity, like Odell the Funky Homo Sapien or
That's
whatever,
right.
like just stuff like that. And Cues What We Aim For, Down with Webster, like these interesting artists that were kind of having moments and would create these really great shows in the downtown music scene and kind of be this like almost like this really interesting kind of hub for everything that was happening in Niagara at the time. And it would kind of like stir the pot so that the music scene wasn't getting stale. Like every year it was like just like, all right, new stuff is moving, there's stuff flowing again, people are excited. And when I left and went to Toronto, I still kind of stayed a little bit involved,
right,
but it started to dwindle. It started to like it was harder. Joel Carrier was no longer involved. He was super busy with City and Color and Alexis, and the past organizers Jen and Steve just didn't have the same infrastructure or big sponsors or any sort of corporate funding. Like it was as DIY as a festival can get. And I think a lot of people don't really realize that this wasn't some like like let's let the promoters are lining their pockets on this.
Right.
There was a few years where Scene Fest had a couple of sponsors like Solo Mobile and Alexis had really taken off and kind of everything hit at the right time. But then for the most part, they were really grinding it out.
Yep.
And so when I had these bigger, resources with my promoter company, I approached Jen and Steve and I said, like, I'd love to partner with you guys and come in and try to revamp Scene Fest and like really make it, what it deserves to be in this new era. And I think the last year was maybe 2014.
2014.
So we brought it to Montebello Park.
Yeah.
And kind of did a main stage there and a VIP pavilion and a side stage. And we had live radio broadcasting. We brought in radio partners and we booked. I didn't get all the bands I wanted to, but we booked a pretty good lineup. It was like, if you look at it now, it's Arkells, it's Lights, it's Sheepdogs, it's Monster Truck, Shad, Glorious Sons, Matthew Good. Like
crazy.
Pretty solid lineup. Tried to keep the tickets as competitive as possible. And also tried to make sure that it was still like local and Ontario based.
Yep.
And so like we had, I think, a lot of the best talent kind of in Southern Ontario and Canada, kind of spread out across different venues, still downtown, but we used Montebello as the hub instead of
Market Square.
Problem was Market Square that like I don't want to say too much, but it wasn't technically even really supposed to be that kind of venue.
Right.
There was logistical issues and permit issues to have a stage the size that we wanted, even in that space.
Right.
So it wasn't initially that Montebello wasn't the initial plan, but it was like, okay, if this festival is going to actually grow, it can't stay in this space.
Well, it makes sense.
It has to go into somewhere bigger. And I thought the setup of Montebello was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a new festival coming called Born and Raised.
That's right.
And not saying that was like copy to that, like Joel grew up in St. Catharines, but I do remember sending him photos of when Monster Truck was on stage, and I'm backstage. You could just see how dope the festival looked and how great. There's trees, there's pavilions, there's washrooms. Like it was really a really cool space, and I don't think people even realize like the same architect that designed Times Square did Montebello Park.
Yeah.
So in terms of St. Catharines architecture landmarks, like it's a special place. So we did it and we worked really, really hard, brought in a bunch of different sponsors, and I thought it was successful, but I think that it was somewhat divisive. I think that I think some of the people from the kind of past generations didn't love all of the upgrades and
Sure.
the kind of approach, and generally speaking, like whether it was the artists that were being booked or whether it was the ticket price being a little bit more expensive or the fact that there even was a VIP lounge or
Right.
whatever. And even though we brought out over the 2 days about 10,000 people, we still lost a lot of money. If I'm
Oh,
being honest
really?
with you, yeah. And my company, like, not, I'll be real about this, wasn't my money, it's my boss's money.
Okay.
It was like a 6-figure loss. So it was tough because it was like something that I thought went really well, and had we stuck that out, I think we could have turned it around after a few years, because Coachella almost went bankrupt before it became Coachella. Like, if you're trying to grow brand recognition, sometimes you take those L's, but the fact that people had a good time, had a good experience, whatever. And there was some artists that I was really close on booking. Shawn Mendes that year.
Mm-hmm.
There was a few things that
That's
I think
cool.
if they hit at the right time, probably would have changed the festival by the, because $100,000, like, when I say that, it's not just like $100,000 that we would make in ticket sales. We were have beer tents and this and that, like merchandise, all these other things. So if we had maybe a few more thousand people, we probably would have broken even.
Okay.
So it wasn't that unrealistic that we would be able to make money and make this thing profitable. But that first year it wasn't. And there was some stuff just kind of behind the scenes that I just didn't feel like went super well. And it kind of coincided with me feeling like I wanted to change, in terms of like moving out of concert promotion.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the reason why, like, but it's just the timing of it all. There was other things happening with the company I was working at, and just kind of like it felt like it was time for a change. So unfortunately, like, we never got to run it back. We never got to go, all right, let's run, like, now that we've done this and we've set this precedent, let's run it back. And I also think that the other people that were running it, that own Scene Music Festival, from a intellectual property side of things, like the name of it, they are not, unfortunately, equipped to do it at the scale that makes sense for them.
Right.
So, when you ask, like, could it ever come back? It's possible.
Sure.
It is, but I think that it would need somebody like what Joel Carey has done with this Born and Raised Festival with City and Color and Alexis on Fire. It would need someone like him to go in and rally Live Nation and book Alexis on Fire and City and Color. But I think that in order to do that, you have to kind of also you'd have to kind of cede some control and some input to the older part of Scene Music Festival, and there might be just too much baggage attached to it at this point.
Sure.
I don't know, and I feel like I'm being candid in this sense, and I don't want to say too much because I don't want to, like, get people upset at me or whatever about this, because I think that, again, it was a little bit divisive the way the festival went, and people were like, oh, there's not enough local talent, there's not enough this, not enough that, and that part was kind of like frustrating to me, because I was like, no, there's like 70% of the lineup's Canadian, 52% of it's from Ontario, like 40% is from, like, the the Niagara region or whatever, and I'd like pull these stats, but how when there's a narrative, people sometimes can maybe make their own facts up, or find confirmation bias.
Sure.
So I think that Born and Raised is probably the new Scene Music Festival for the time being.
I agree.
Unfortunately, it's not all downtown encompassing. I don't know if that could ever come back, because you also have to factor in too, like, there's so many people that have to buy in for that. I've been to South by Southwest in Austin for many years, and, like, it's similar in the sense of it takes over, a downtown core, there's outdoor stages, but there's so much more funding, and there's such a big organization involved in it that economically it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But here you need, if you do it on a Friday or Saturday, you need these bars to be like, yeah, sure, we'll not open up for our regular crowd and permit to this. And you also need local artists to really be able to carry it and champion it. And right now, maybe you could correct me, but I don't think that I haven't seen a band from St. Catharines that's been able to do what City and Color Lex on Fire has been able to do.
Yeah.
Because that was quite extraordinary, and we were very, very lucky to have that, and lucky to have their manager care about this music scene to continue to foster it so that I could be in a position where I could even promote concerts and book it. And now I know there's shows and there's venues and there's people that are working really hard, but I don't feel like there's been bands that have transcended the scene in a way that even kind of comes close to that, that could kind of kick the door open. Like, you know, OVO Fest that Drake does in Toronto is successful because Drake is so big that he can make it successful. He can prioritize it. He can put on the artists he wants. Lex on Fire was a big part of that with Scene Music Festival. It was, all right, Lex on Fire's playing. Well, now we're going to get Cancer Bats and Monine and these bands. And now these bands are playing. Well, their agents also rep Down with Webster and Lights and these artists. And so you could kind of, on the back end, you can quickly build around it if you have like an anchor artist that's involved.
Sure.
If you don't have that, it's a lot harder. And and festivals are, I mean, they're money pits, man. Like, for real. Like, you know, for every Osheaga or you know, Coachella or Boots and Hearts or whatever, there's like all of these like Way Homes and Turfs and different festivals that didn't make it. Yeah. And I think that that's my really long answer. Saying,
that's great, and I think I agree. I also don't think the venues are even there's many venues downtown anymore to even kind of support something like that. At least ones that like even have a stage or a proper sound system, right?
It's true. Even, I mean, I would argue that even some of the venues in St. Catharines that are active don't have a proper stage or sound system.
There you go. Yeah.
And I didn't. Here's the thing too, like. It's funny because when I was a promoter and I would do shows in St. Catharines, bands would come and complain about the systems or the riders or whatever. Oh, there's no green room, there's no this, there's no that. And I, you know, the kind of sentiment here was like, oh, come on, like, you can make this work. This is a good venue. And the shows were special and they were great. But then when I moved to Toronto and started to work with venues like, I mean, you know, before it was Rebel, it was Sound Academy or Cool House or Phoenix or Opera House, and you started to see the differences and the juxtapositions, and you realize, okay, yeah, no, like, we're not equipped, and we were lucky that these bands would come in and they would kind of concede.
Right.
And not every band, like bands like Dead and Divine and Holy Springs Disaster, they were like, no, this is fine, like we're punk rock, like we're cool, but trying to bring in some of those, like punching up. You know, like bringing in these artists that were big or these U.S. touring artists, they would have to supplement the sound systems. We'd have to, you know, rent in all this extra equipment, or they would not be able to use the stage monitors and have to run everything through in-ears, or there'd be just like, you know, all of these different challenges that we were kind of constantly dealing with. And, you know, again, I understand why the infrastructure wasn't the same here at the venues, because it is in Toronto. It's not going to get, you know, a venue here isn't going to get 300 shows a year. Right. So it's a you know, a cost thing, right? It's like if we spend this much money, then we're not going to make anything. So I get it, but I think that it's something that makes it hard for artists to want to come back to if they have to make concessions. They have to make concessions financially. They don't have they're not as comfortable. It doesn't sound as good. The shows aren't as well attended. A certain point, they're just going to be like, well, I'll just play Toronto. It's not worth it. It's not worth coming here, and that sucks, you know. And that part of me, you know, kind of sometimes wishes that I had been able to stay and promote more in St. Catharines and help maybe, you know, fight against that, you know, and then try to be proactive. But again, it's like, you know, we have different eras of our lives, and we grow and we move on, and then you hope that someone else can step into that position and thrive. And I think there's been some cool stuff that's happened here for sure, but I can't help but look back at some of the stuff that I experienced, not just as a promoter, but as a fan, and be like, man, those were the days. Like, that was the golden era. Yeah, you know?
For sure. Well, we could probably get into some anecdotes now. So, tell me some of the fun stories you have from working with bands and over the years.
Yeah. So I'm gonna I like kind of made a couple of notes, so I might quickly look at that.
Yeah, go right ahead.
But this one wasn't like the funnest day, but this is one of the stories that like just always sticks out in my mind. So, you know, there was an era where you would book these like U.S. tour packages of metalcore bands, and none of them would be that big. maybe there'd be like one band that like was kind of buzzing, and then every other band you'd have to like put in brackets like the record label they were signed to.
Right.
Do you remember that era?
Yeah.
And it'd be like, yeah, like Velocity Records or this Records or whatever next to it. Like, you know, you have to kind of have a description of the band. And I don't even remember what label they're on, if it was Rise Records or something. But there was a band called Recon.
Yep.
Do you remember this? And Dorian Gray was an opener. It's funny, I stayed in a hotel last night in Niagara Falls with my wife, Alex, and Alex from Dorian Gray was working at the hotel.
No way.
Showed up.
That's funny.
But it was like Recon, and he's like, I don't even remember the other band names.
Yeah.
But there was, I think, 3 other bands, Recon, and then a local opener, and I think the show had sold maybe 200 tickets in advance, and it was going to be an awesome show, and it was Dorian Gray, the local bands, it was their CD release. Everyone's really excited. And one of the things that we did at L3 to kind of prevent people from bands from sneaking in people, which was just a thing that happened all the time, was saying if you're not in the bands or are part of the crew, you can't hang out in the venue until after the doors open. Just as a, like, you know, let's keep stragglers who aren't really here to pay or whatever out of the venue.
Yeah, it's like a safety precaution.
Yeah. Well, it was mostly financial, but sure. In this particular situation, it was a safety precaution. So, so this guy on, I think it was the singer Recon, you know, he had a girl with him, and he tries bringing her in the front with him, and she's like, the security guard's like, hey man, like, she can't come in until doors open. And he's just like, yeah, okay, cool. And just like walks away. And then they go around back, and he's like bringing her in the back. And the security guard's like, hey man, like, I told you, like, she can't come in. And there's a couple, I think there's one other band guy and the singer of the band, Recon, and they just start mouthing off to the security guard. Like, not saying nice things and not saying things that, like, just words that, like, I wouldn't even repeat on this podcast. I wouldn't even say it loud. And they kind of start, like, the singer starts pressing the security guard. And this security guard that worked at L3 at the time, he wasn't a super imposing dude, but he was like, I think he was a black belt, and it was like killer boxer too.
Yeah.
So definitely a guy you didn't want to mess with. And Recon dude's getting in his face, and my security guard basically swings on him.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he knocked him out, but like knocked him down.
Yeah.
Like shook him up. And but mind you, I'm somewhere else when this is happening. I'm not watching this.
Put out another fire.
Sure, probably. Or like, you know, in downstairs of the office, you know, prepping stuff for the show or whatever. And this is like, these guys are all big on this tour too. It's just like all big, mean, tatted up like dudes. They came in with an energy that was, this tour had an energy that was a little hostile.
Yeah.
And so I remember going back kind of in the venue, and I see the security guards like shaking his hand out like this. And I'm like, and I don't know if someone's not watching this, I'm just shaking my hand. Someone's listening to this, you don't need to see it. But I'm like, what's going on, dude? And he's like, man, I'm sorry, dude. Like, this guy he stepped to me though, man. Like, and I didn't know what was gonna happen. I thought I was gonna get jumped. And I'm like, what the fuck happened, dude?
Yeah.
And he's like, I punched the singer, or I punched one of the guys. And then as he's telling me, I'm kind of hearing like rumblings around the venue, like just like stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then a bunch of the band members start like congregating and start to roll up, and we're near the entrance, and I'm like, get behind the bar, like go behind here, because it was literally me and him in the venue that were like kind of, I guess, on the venue side of things.
Right.
I didn't work for the venue, but obviously I worked them a lot. That it was like,
you worked with them.
Yeah. And so they kind of come, they're like, hey man, like start pointing fingers and like getting really aggressive, like, you just hit this dude, like step outside, like we want to kick your ass,
right,
like, whatever. And he's like, I'll step outside and I'll fight one of you guys one-on-one. And he's like, no, like if you step outside, we're all stepping outside. And I'm like in the middle, like, guys, like chill out, like everybody calm down. And they're just super aggressive. And so he called the security guard. I'm like, go downstairs, dude. Like, call Joe. Joe is the venue owner.
Mm-hmm. And
Joe runs the St. Catherine's boxing club.
Yeah, he does.
So he calls up like a bunch of like goons from the boxing club. And they like roll up, and like You know, these guys are like gangs in New York. Like, there was like some young dudes that were like, yeah, like, okay, this guy looks like a young athlete boxing. And then there were some other guys who were like, that guy looks like the guy not to fuck with. Like, you know, like
Yeah.
dudes that probably like, you know, like had chains on them. Or
Right,
something.
right.
Like weird stuff like that. And again, they weren't coming to fight. They were coming to defuse the situation.
Right.
Like, they didn't, like Joe's not like that. Like, everything was just about like,
But if anything happens.
yeah, protecting the club, protecting the event. And it sucked because we ended up sitting, like myself, the owner, and I think like the headlining band. We like sat, we sat with them, and we're like, guys, like, is this gonna be okay? And they weren't really happy. And basically, Joe was like, dude, we have to cancel the show.
Yeah.
He's like, because if we let these guys on stage, and there's 400 people in here, and they tell these guys like, fuck this security, whatever. He's like, it's gonna be chaos. And the band was really like, they were really mad. But I had been working with a friend on the Hamilton show the next day, so I was like, guys, like, if you blow this up, I'll have to cancel Hamilton too.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't want that to happen, so they ended up basically, you know, conceding on hey, we have to cancel the show. You know, they waited around for security dude to come outside. They tried throwing shit at him. He kind of got to his car. It was a really nightmare, awkward situation. And then the next show, the next night, like, really stiffed too. And it was like, I remember I was like scared they were gonna jump me. So I like, there was like one nice guy in the tour, and I put the settlement on on an envelope. I put the money in. I handed it to him like before they like went on stage, and like after like the door was closed basically. And
yeah.
I went and got into my car, and I'm like, got the fuck out of that city. I was like, so that was one that was memorable but not super fun.
Right.
I'm trying to think of some others here. So, I mean, dude, we're booking Bring Me the Horizon on the Suicide Season album tour at L3. I think that was 2004, maybe.
Yeah.
Is that right? I don't know. Were you going to the shows at that time?
Yeah.
Did you go to that show?
Yeah.
That show was insane.
It was insane.
That was the fastest show that ever sold out that I booked.
Really?
There. Yeah.
That's cool.
And it was like, we had, the thing is like in St. Catharines, shows didn't sell out very often.
Right.
You know, I had a City and Color show, which was another cool time. It was the show where they filmed the Save Your Sisters music video.
Oh, cool.
Which was the debut music video. So I booked that show. That show had sold out, which was really cool. I remember that show was like so full, and I was like trying to get to the front through the crowd, and like some guys like, God, like, say excuse me, like kind of getting mad at me because I'm trying to move through. I'm like, dude, I'm just the promoter. I'm trying to get to the front. He's like, yeah, right. You know, like why would I lie about that?
Yeah.
Anyways, and then but that one, the Bring Me the Horizon one, sold out like clean in advance, like way in advance, and it was just a nuts show. Like, I don't know if you remember, Ollie, like the first song, started climbing the lighting truss.
Yep.
In L3 and like moved into the middle of the venue and was hanging, and it was actually so crazy that I had to stop watching at a certain point because I was so nervous someone was gonna get hurt.
Right.
And it was just like one of those situations where I was like, man, I can't, like, if this is someone's gonna really get hurt during this set. It's like the craziest show at the venue, maybe one of them. I gotta get out of here. And then I remember we also did a Madball show.
Yep. We'll come back in.
Yeah, where during Madball's set, some like, do you remember the hardcore crew from Buffalo? What were they called? Like,
Ron Crew?
No, it was I can't remember what it was, but they were like like it was one of those like crews you heard about.
Okay.
And these guys came from Buffalo to the show, so it was all these guys that like weren't really, you didn't see them at every show.
Right.
Or like Western New York they came from. And during Madball's set, I think they were trying to, I don't know what was going on. I would always try to make sure security let people mosh and do their thing, because most of the time that I saw security intervene in those situations, it would end up making it worse.
Right.
You know, it's more like, hey, just like, you know, let the kids play, and someone might get hit or whatever, but like they know what, there's a bit of a code happening here,
yeah,
for the most part. Every now and again someone would come in and be a shithead, and that would make things complicated for security, but like in this particular situation it was these guys, like these massive dudes that were just coming in and like dummying people, so security tried to get them out. These guys were so big they started beating up security.
Jesus.
So they had to stop like the set,
Yeah.
call the cops, and literally escort these dudes out of the venue before restarting the show.
Wow.
So that one was really crazy. Let me see. I wrote a couple notes. Let me see if I have one more here.
Yeah.
On the Bantidote side. Well, a couple things. I did book Paramore's first ever Canadian show.
Really?
Yeah.
That's super cool.
I've got a couple more to rattle off quick. But that Paramore show, they were opening up for Funeral for a Friend and Armor for Sleep.
Nice.
And I was like, I don't know, 17. I was doing the show with Joel Carey at the time when I was working with Bedlam Society. And there was another band on that still was supposed to be on the tour. I think they were called Emmanuel, who were really good. And they dropped off, and I was bummed. And they're like, yeah, it's going to be this band, Paramore, instead. And I was like, Paramore? Like, what's that about? And so checked out their music. This was like, I think they had a song called Emergency and Pressure. So
yeah.
Pre-Misery Business. Like, Haley was still 16.
Wow.
And I remember messaging them on MySpace. And
yeah.
Being like, hey guys, like, I'm the promoter for your show. Like, is this your first time coming to Canada? Like, really excited. And they messaged me back, like, yeah, really excited, thanks, see you soon. And I screenshot it. I still have that MySpace message with Paramore, which I thought was pretty cool.
That's super cool.
Especially because of what, they went on to do. And, and then A Day to Remember, we booked really early, too. It was one of their first shows, if you recall.
Yeah.
Pre-Homesick. And another story, and... again, I could go on for a long time if I opened it up to all the Toronto shows, but I'm going to stick kind of in the Niagara region because I feel like that's primarily like what you're covering.
Yep.
There was a show, so I'll just say it was Swollen Members.
Okay.
This was kind of in the twilight part of their career. It was after, after they had like real big success.
Right.
And they were touring. I think they had an album out called like Black Magic or something.
Yeah.
And I'll be real, like I wasn't a big Swollen Members fan.
Sure.
But when I was a promoter, I didn't really let my personal taste inform every decision.
Right.
It was more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, is there an opportunity to book this? Will someone care? Does it make sense financially? Like, sure, I'll try booking Swollen Members.
Mm-hmm.
They were on tour with Black Eyed Peas, and they had a couple of days off. And I think they had like a Toronto show supporting Black Eyed Peas. And then it was like, do you want to book a St. Catharines show around this? And it wasn't super expensive, so I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And how it works when you promote a show or you book a show as like a buyer or promoter is, you get sent a contract, and on the contract there's what's called a rider, right? Which is just essentially like a list of demands.
Yeah.
But the rider has to kind of be matched up with what the offer budget had in it. Meaning, when I put in an offer, I basically will cap certain expenses. So, catering, for example, you might say, we have $200 for catering, right? That's all I can spend for this. And you agree to that. You sign that, like your agent signs that off and says $200 for catering, fine. And then you get a rider, and the rider's got like $1,500 worth of shit on it. It's
right.
Got, it's got the most expensive Patron.
Yeah.
Fancy beer, and they want, meals and buyouts and snacks, all of these things. And I would always try to feed bands. Like I used to just like try to make sure that happened.
Yeah.
And make sure that they have alcohol, because, certain bands like to drink.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the shows we were doing in St. Catharines, like we just weren't able to accommodate the full rider. So what you do is you take the rider, cross off the things you can't do, you fax it back. At this time, like, this is how long ago I was faxing.
Yes.
And you fax it back and you go, this is what I can do, like, basically. And if the agent has a problem with it, they call you and go, hey, well, can we switch this out, or can we get a little more money here, or whatever. But usually they understand this is not a Scotiabank or Air Canada Center show. This isn't an arena tour. This is a very small club in a secondary, tertiary market. It is what it is.
Yeah.
You make do with it. They came in, and the tour manager's like, where's this, where's that? This beer's not the right beer, blah blah blah. And so we're like, okay, well, like, yeah, like, we can get you this different kind of beer, and like, we'll do our best to accommodate, but like, I can't do all this, and I already told your agent all this. I already signed back the rider. Here it is. Here's the executed contract. Like, here's what we agreed to. Like, in legal terms, here's our agreement. And he's like, yeah, well, it doesn't really matter because like my guys need this. And I'm like, can't do it. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, and the show's not selling well. I'm gonna lose money already. So you're asking me to like lose more money.
Yeah.
And so it was weird. And then he's like, well, I don't know if they're gonna play the show. And I was like, man, if you don't want to play the show, like, that's okay. Like, I can't lose more on this. And I was like, if you guys cancel, so Il Scarlet was supporting on the show. I was like, and they were kind of on the come up, and Il Scarlet's like, yeah, we'll play. I'm like, cool, I'll lower the ticket price. I'll have Il Scarlet play. If you want refunds, we want refunds. If not, we'll make it a show.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just, like, I had already at that point been doing it long enough that I knew, like, you just got to roll with the punches.
Yep.
And you kind of have to, like, stand firm where you can, give where you can, and, you know, keep moving. So, Mad Child from the band, like, walks in the venue, and he's like, where's the promoter? Like, and he's got a security guard with him, like this really big dude. And I'm like wearing fucking flip-flops, dude. Like, I'm not, you know, I'm not imposing at all. And I'm not a fighter, and I'm not trying to be like that at all. And I'm not trying to, that's just not how I roll.
Right, yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm right here, man. Like, let's talk. Like, what's up? And he's like, he's just, I forget what he said exactly. He's like, where's the flyer? And like, I'm like, it's over here. And he's like looking at the flyer, and he's like, you promote this show? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, how'd you promote it? I'm like, oh, well, we did this. We actually had a rap battle, and the winner of the rap battle got to open the show.
Cool.
Like, we didn't phone it in. Like, we promoted the show. I think we had sold maybe 100 tickets.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, listen, he's like, you ain't gonna grind me. I ain't no Backstreet Boy. And I'm like, no, man, I'm not trying to grind you, dude. Like, I'm literally just like, this is what was in the contract. This is all we can afford. And he's a short dude.
Yeah.
But like stocky, right?
Right.
And you know, there was rumors of, oh, these guys are Hell's Angels backed and this and that. So I wanted like nothing to do with like any sort of physical confrontation. And thankfully Joe from the venue was kind of there watching, like kind of not like getting in the middle of it, but I could tell he was kind of, hey, like, what are these guys trying to do here?
Yeah.
And he used to box too, so I was like, okay, at least Joe's here watching. Like, please, nothing happened. And so he kind of like does the whole like, you're not gonna grind me, I'm not no Backstreet Boy. And then he goes downstairs to the men's washroom. If you remember, you know, L3's 3 levels.
Yeah.
You go downstairs, there's like pool tables, washrooms inside. Goes into the washroom, proceeds to take off the top of the toilet seat.
Okay.
Like, or the toilet, the top of the toilet, like whatever that thing is called.
Yeah.
That you get into the basin. And put cocaine on it and do cocaine. before walking out of the venue back onto his bus.
Sure.
And then I was like, man, I hope this show doesn't happen. Like, I just want to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
And then he's like, yeah, they're gonna play. And then the tour manager goes, yeah, they're gonna play, but they're staying on the bus until they're set. And I'm like, okay, dude, like, whatever.
With the toilet seat?
He left the toilet seat down. He left this, like, he took it off, put it over the bowl, did it, and then left. And I was like, I don't know if that was like a power move or whatever. It was like, I was uncomfortable. So
right.
It was just like, dude, okay, yes, please get them back on the bus. But the show ended up happening. It did lose money.
Yeah.
It was unfortunate. However, I will say, because I don't want to, you know, like, I think at the time I was upset about it, you know, because I felt like, man, like, you guys have had all this success, you've done all this, like, really, why are you trying to grind me? If there's anyone you should be upset with, it should be your agent for even booking you the show.
Right.
Clearly this is a waste of time for you.
Yeah.
And that's fair, but it's not my bad.
Yeah.
Like, and now I believe that Mad Child, like the dude from Soul Members, has like gotten sober and like been an advocate for recovery and cleaned up his life, and I think that was probably a pretty dark time for them.
Sure.
So I definitely, you know, I don't want to make light of like you know, that part of it, but at the time it was kind of like, man, you fucking asshole, you know, like what the hell? And yeah, so I think that those were some of my my bantidotes from that kind of era.
Crazy.
For sure, yeah.
When I have guests on, I typically ask them, because they're normally touring all the time, what their go-to gas station snack is. And I know that you're vegan and you advocate for veganism. Is there anything you would grab in a pinch if you need something?
Cliff Bars.
Yeah, of course.
So gas stations, They're tough, and I'm like, but it's weird because I toured before, and I've also like done a lot of road trips and whatnot, and I am the person that like every gas station I kind of go through every aisle and I skim it 'cause I'm like maybe there's some sort of like some sort of awesome treat here that I'm just like sleeping on. But I will say it's more often than not a Cliff Bar. Sometimes they have the Cliff Builders bars.
Right.
Every now and again you might get like a dried fruit thing or something.
Yeah.
Like a sun-ripe fruit bar or like, some like, dried mangoes or something like that. When I was with Crystalline, Scotty's band, they did have when I was managing them, we had a tour in Japan that was...
nice. And you went out to Japan with them?
Yeah, I went to Japan with them.
Super cool.
And that was pretty cool because at the 7-Elevens they had sushi.
Really?
So you could get like inari, like bean curd inari sushi. They had like onigiri that had like sea vegetables in it.
Really?
And thankfully we had a guy with us, Masa, his name was, who ran the label that we were working with at the time, who also kind of tour managed, and he would help me like, hey, don't get this one. This is the one with like eel in it or whatever.
Okay.
Like get this one. And they also had soy milk, and I'd buy frozen mangoes too. So I'd buy frozen mango chunks, some like bean curd sushi, some onigiri, and like soy milk. And it was like, that's what I like lived off.
Nice.
And like Chris and I were like, they were just like, let's go to McDonald's, let's go to the Burger King, And they just get all the like the weird like versions of their American stuff. Though we did go to a vegan restaurant together in Nagoya, which was really cool. Yeah, it was. That's like one of the cool parts about being vegan is that it kind of forces you a little bit when you're on the road to seek out options.
That's right.
Which then can kind of be interesting because before I was vegan, I just ate whatever, man. Like, I ate like, just whatever's the closest, easiest thing.
Convenient.
Yeah, let's just find something, and wasn't super mindful about what I put in my body, and then it became something I was like, looking forward to traveling because I get to try this awesome vegan spot I've heard about in New York.
That's
or
cool.
Los Angeles or Austin or wherever, and Winnipeg or Vancouver, and now I feel like that's like one of my favorite parts. It's just like discovering that stuff. But and when it comes to the gas stations, it's probably Cliff Bars, man. I used to like energy drinks back in the day, but I can't.
Yeah.
I can't really drink those
Can't
anymore.
do them anymore.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, when I have musicians on, I typically go, say you're at the level of Metallica, what would be the rock star dream rider for them? But someone who's worked with so many cool people, what is one of the wildest things you've seen on a rider that you can talk about?
That's a good question. Man, what have I seen on a rider that's really interesting? So, like, we did a lot of, when I was working with Union Events, we did a lot of hip-hop shows.
Yep.
I think it was Currency. So, like, Currency's, like, done a lot of stuff with Wiz Khalifa.
Yeah.
I think he did a show at Opera House, and he had on his rider, he had to have a new pair of white Air Force Ones. Because he wouldn't wear the same pair twice.
Sure.
And he needed, like, the Air Force Ones.
Yeah, you're at that level, right?
Yeah. I remember we did some shows. There was a tour. It was like it's a Rise Against tour. I can't remember who was supporting this date, but our company did a show in London, and I was stoked because just backstage it was vegan catering because they're all vegan, so they had like vegan chicken and all this stuff. So that was really cool. I'm trying to think like. I think the clothes and stuff like that was always this isn't a particular to necessarily a concert rider, but this artist I work with, YSB Trill, he has a song called Touchdown, and it has a rapper on it named Bankroll Hayden, and Bankroll Hayden's a bit of a bigger artist than he is, and the label's really excited to have him involved, and he had a guest feature on the song, so he raps in the record, and he has a line that's like SB's like Ben and Jerry, which is like referencing the Ben and Jerry SB Dunks that are kind of like the Ben and Jerry colorways.
Yeah.
And they were like a really popular sneaker that sold out, and they resell on StockX for a lot. And then we were going to shoot a music video, and basically he's like, yeah, I'll do the music video, but like, I need y'all to get me those SB Ben & Jerry's. And so like the A&R's like, yo, like, does anyone got a plug? These shoes are like $1,300.
Jesus.
And you know, kind enough, this dude bought the shoes for him. So, and
Nice.
he rocked them in the video.
That's cool.
But I was like, man, couldn't you like wrap up Vans? Or, like, you know, like, I like or get the shoes before you wrap up them. But it was cool. Like it was
Just
it was
CGI the shoes.
Yeah.
Be cheaper.
Oh my god, he gets so clowned.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Yeah. No, but yeah, the rider stuff, man, it's just like, you know, one thing I just appreciate about like riders is like whenever there's accommodation on the vegan side and there's healthier food, because a lot of times the catering at these festivals or backstage, it's just like, it's not good, and not even necessarily like, forget about vegan, but just like sustenance, you know? 'Cause I feel like bands, when you're on the road, you are eating at a gas station.
Yeah.
You are eating fast food. So just something that feels home cooked, something that feels like it was made with a little bit of love, that's just not gonna like give you sodium poisoning.
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
Like that alone is like a win to me. And yeah, there's been some good festivals, like Blues Fest has amazing catering backstage, and they have like just amazing stuff. And you know, I've been fortunate enough to spend some time backstage at Coachella, and it's just like a different level of selection,
Right.
which I always appreciate.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, I've only got one more question for you. I need your all-time 5 favorite artists of all time. If you can't give me 5, give me 3 if you can.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I remember, so I listened to the episode with Sleeper Set Sail, and I feel like they got like pretty stumped on this question, Mike and Casey. I'll say, and you know, some people, this is called Bantadotes, right?
Yeah.
So some people might not love this answer, but I'm going to put Drake in one of them.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Does it have to be in order or no?
No order. No
Okay.
particular order.
Drake, The Killers.
Nice.
Killers are like just amazing live. Like they're like it's like a religious experience seeing them
Wow.
live. Man, this is tough. I'll probably put Casey Musgraves in there.
Cool.
I might put Bring Me the Horizon in as well.
They're a great band.
Yeah.
They're doing so much for their sound.
Yeah, Bring Me the Horizon, like, I think that they have, and I know there's controversy around that band. I think some of those bands, I think they did some things in the past and were pretty crazy, that, like, there's a bit of lore around it,
Right.
especially Ollie and stuff. But I do think that the fact that they've been able to push that genre forward in a way that has pushed them outside of the box and been able to transcend it and stay relevant to new generations of fans
100%.
is just so important, and really, I think, underrated. The 5th band, you know what? It's like I might have to go to like Rage Against the Machine.
Cool.
Probably, yeah. I think that music is completely timeless. But I could, like, you know, if I was, you know, gonna add a few more, I might throw Newfound Glory on there.
Very good.
I might throw Turnstile on there. You know, there's definitely some stuff that would be like runner-ups.
Right.
J. Cole. You know, there's so much good music. And the one thing, dude, like the one thing I'll say that, and I try to encourage friends of mine, when I talk to them about music and music discovery, is like, keep listening to new music. Like, don't get caught in the bubble of music that was exciting to you when you were in high school and think that everything else sucks.
Right.
Because there's so much good music out there. It's ridiculous. It's hard to keep up with
Yeah.
how much good stuff there is. And actually, sorry, I would add, maybe I might bump out one of them. I might throw Snow Allegra, this amazing R&B artist, in the mix too, because she's been like #1 on my Spotify Wrapped the last 2 years.
Nice.
So I feel like that might trump something. But yeah, I just feel like there's so much good new music out there. And but sometimes I think that this part of our lives, when we're like 15 to 19, this like kind of coming of age era, it's so important to us, and it's so the discovery is so like the synapses are firing, right? Like, you're discovering bands, you're going to shows, you're having these new experiences. I forgot about Deftones too. I'd have like a top 50, bro. But like people, then you start to get comfortable and think, okay, this is what I like, and you stop kind of acquiring new taste.
Yeah.
But what I realized, because I felt like there was new artists that were coming out and they were really popular, and I'm like, well, and I listened to it, like, let's say the first time I heard Lil Uzi Vert or something,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, well, what is this? Like, I don't know if I like this. And then, but I'm like, it's so popular. I have to give it another chance.
Yeah.
And I listen to it more and more, and then I start to acquire the taste, and I start to understand the sonics and why it's good. And then I really end up liking it. And then, you know, the same things happen with like the hyper pop genre recently, where there's all these new artists like Glaive and Eric DOA and 100 Gex, and these artists that are really kind of doing something that's really, it almost reminds me of like the MySpace movement back in the day.
Yeah.
That is kind of on this fringe, but it feels like it's about to tip over into mainstream. So I try to really almost force myself to listen to new music every single week, so that I can make sure that my ears are staying sharp to like what's happening in the music culture in general, because I don't want to miss something just because I'm caught listening to They're Only Chasing Safety by Growth like, for the millionth time, which I'll still do, of course, but I also like, I love being able to hear like listening to Deftones, and then I listen to this new artist, this kid like Rory 404, and I'm like, this kid has to love Deftones, because I can hear it in his guitar tones, or I can hear it in this reference here, or the new Bring Me the Horizon, man, they must have been listening to They're Only Chasing Safety, because like some of these hooks feel like this to this. And I think that music is cyclical, so like kind of keeping your ear to the ground, but while also still honoring some of the stuff that you kind of first fell in love with is really important. And my list can get really lengthy.
It's important to know the distinction of why you're listening to either of those bands, right?
I think so, yeah. And I think you and I, like, we're sitting here because we're not average music listeners.
Right.
Like, we're definitely in the, you know, the whatever percent, like a fringe percentage that really dives in on a lot deeper level. But I do think that, it's just, it's important to like, find new art and support new artists, and give things a chance, and not write them off because of like what box it's in, or what type of person listens to it, or whatever. And I was guilty of that when I was younger. I'd be like, oh, mainstream hip hop, like fuck that, like, or oh, this is on the radio, it can't be good. And it's like, well, hold up, like all of it's bad? Like I don't think so. Like there's definitely like, if you and sometimes people will be like, oh, no one's making good music anymore. I'm like, you're not listening to what I'm
That's just
to,
it.
you know, like there's a surplus of good music. It's just a matter of, you know, figuring out what you like, trying new things, having discovery sources, you know, whether it's SoundCloud or Spotify or TikTok or a friend of yours or a blog you check out or a podcast or whatever. Like, listen to new shit, like keep discovering it, but also go support those old bands when they go do their reunion tour too. And it's funny, I was like, I listened to that episode with you and Casey and Mike, and when they're like, you're like, would you guys ever do a reunion? And I'm like, please. They're
like, no.
And they're like, no.
Rats.
Like, dude, Mike DeSilva could learn that stuff again.
Come on, Mike. We know you're watching.
Yeah.
We can make this happen.
If you guys are watching, man, like, just do it. Like, just figure it out. It'll be worth it. You'll love it. It'll be like the best night of your lives.
There you go.
You know, like, just do it. And you got 2 people here that are going to buy tickets.
Yeah, for sure. So. Right on. Well, I think we can end it there. So if you want to plug all the social medias, or if you have anything else that you want to shout outs to, I know your wife has a vegan bakery that if you want to plug right now, or.
Yeah, I'd like to plug her stuff for sure. She's awesome. It's a bakery called Sweet Hart Kitchen. It's in Kensington Market in Toronto, kind of near Toronto Western Hospital. It's spelled Hart though, so Sweet Hart Kitchen.
Yep.
You know, they just celebrated their 5th year in business. It's all vegan. It's gluten-free. They have keto-friendly treats, so people that are diabetic or insulin resistant can go and kind of enjoy things that are still going to hit that sweet tooth. Refined sugar-free as well, and organic. So it's very much like, you know, sustainably driven and kind of health conscious while still being tasty and delicious.
Yeah.
So I would say definitely check out that if you're in Toronto, if you're interested in those things. On my stuff, man, you know what I mean? Like, I don't really, like, have a ton of stuff to plug. You know, I think partnersrecordlabel.co is going to probably drop next month. But I think that, like, we don't, even as we launch our label, it's really, I don't want it to be about us. I want it to be about platforming the artists.
Love that.
Know? So Elko, one of our artists, has a new project coming out called Digital Dysmorphia, with a new single coming out next month, that if you're interested in kind of like, to me, something that feels alternative but also cutting edge, I would say check out Elko, ELKO. You know, if you're interested in something pop, I would say check out Rev. If you're interested in something kind of R&B inspired, check out Anders. But my like handles and stuff are still Pat_Murphy. So if anybody from the music scene is that like wants to reconnect or say what's up, like Pat_Murphy, hit me up, and
Perfect.
yeah, we can chop it up and get nostalgic. And yeah, I don't know, I want to hear new shit too. So like I'm always down to discover new stuff. So I would suggest if anybody's listening to this that gives a shit about what I think or wants me to hear their music, like please plug it, you know, like just don't be afraid to send me a link or whatever. And if you want my opinion or feedback or just, you know, you want those extra streams,
Yeah.
like hit me up. I'm listening. I love discovering new music, and I really even though I don't get to spend as much time in St. Catharines as I used to, Niagara, like this is my home. This is like I have family here. I would love to see this music scene continue to thrive. I would love to see bands from this area make it. If there's ways that I can be supportive in that, like I'm down to, you know, have those conversations. And you know, we still do a lot of our merch through Press Time. I know you got the B-Boy shirt on.
Yeah.
You know, there's still a lot of great people doing stuff. Like I know Eric Dixon has been working really hard with the warehouse scene. You know, I'd love to shout out L3 because of all the support that they gave me.
Yeah.
I'd shout out Scene Music Festival, Joel Carrier. Like, it's you know, I've had some success, but it's really been because of the people that have come before me and helped give me those opportunities. So like I would, you know, be more than happy to repay that to, you know, the people that are you know, pure at heart and have that kind of same energy and want to kind of put in the work or, you know, have that same kind of passion. So I think that is my plug there. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Cool. Well, we'll end it there, folks.